archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
We welcome you to our program. Welcome to Studio One.
It's indeed a pleasure to welcome our own Member of Parliament, because the area where we are sitting, you are the elected people's representative. In a way, we are all your constituents, ma'am. And this one can say with some amount of responsibility and authority, you've played a very stellar role both in the House as well as in the constituency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaushik. I mean, it gives an immense pleasure. If I may say, I'll say you didn't make a wrong choice.
You have been an activist, as we all know, a very senior practitioner of the legal profession, one of the stellar women legal professionals in our country. But for our overseas audience who want to know you, what is Srimati Meenakshi Lekhi?
Someone who loves life, someone who associates with anything, everything, the person who lives by the moment and moment by moment. That's the person you're dealing with. And absolutely straightforward, no beating about the bush. So you see it and you get it. It's the same person you're dealing with, not a very deceptive personality, but more clear personality you're dealing with.
What drives you to work with so much enthusiasm and with so much zeal? We all know there are mundane problems everywhere, but still you are carrying on with your work.
I think the focus, because it's not as if there are less hurts in life as compared to anybody else, and or there are less stress. I think there will be more stress, if not more than as much as anyone else. But the way to go forward is you remain focused on the task in hand and you count your blessings. So I count my blessings and I always tell myself that God's been kind to me. God's given me the life I wanted. Sometimes I used to creep. Initially, my kids will turn around and they'll tell me, I can say they are my guiding force. So they will tell me, they say, Mom, you made a conscious choice. So much about your choice, now you exercise it. So I believe in that once you've exercised your choice, you have no reason to complain. You just do your work and do your work with the best of your ability.
That's wonderful. You played a very important role in the drafting of the Women's Reservation Bill. Could you share with us about, there were long hours, no doubt, plus a lot of other things that were going on. It's a remarkable piece of legislation which we hope very soon would be passed.
So I have a slightly different opinion as compared to the bill which is pending in the Parliament House. So the one which is pending in the Parliament House, it basically blocks the constituencies, which says that this constituency becomes a women constituency, so women end up competing against men, and one of the 2 women or 3 women or 5 women only gets to be elected. My formula is slightly different. My formula is that no constituency is to be reserved for women, because then you are actually getting one of the 2 women or one of the 5 women. The idea should be to allow a natural progression and a natural methodology in which women get to be elected and get to be the leaders, and that possibility exists only and only if the political parties introduce that many number of women within the political system, and instead of reserving seats, the constituency, that many tickets have to be given by the political parties to the women candidates. No political party on the face of it would want to lose 33% seats. I mean, if it's a regional party, it would not want to lose 33% seats, or national party would not want to lose 33% seats across. So they will have to search for very competent women who can fight and who can deliver. And in that process, we will actually be promoting the women leadership, and we will actually be promoting women who deserve to be in the leadership position. And the parties which do not give this ticket distribution as per the law mandates, you can actually deregularize those parties and do not give their symbols to them. So regional party does not get the regional symbol, the national party does not get the national symbol if they do not give that many tickets to women candidates, and that brings out the best of women, and even the experience of contesting in the process will teach a lot of politics and a lot of presence to women leaders. So I feel it's across party lines that we need to promote women leadership, but what kind of leadership? They should be leaders like leadership is recognized not as a favor done to women. I mean, I do not seek any favor. So I have competed against two men and I made it. And the fun part is I had a long experience behind me as an activist, as a lawyer, a long life behind me, and politics also, which was not electoral politics, but electorally this was my first debut. So this was my debut election, and yet two men got defeated. So it's okay, women can defeat, and they do have the capacity to defeat men in their own game the way it needs to be played.
Another important issue which is very close to your heart is the safety of women. Can you tell us about some of the steps that you have suggested to the authorities in this regard?
I feel whenever we try and make women's safety issue as a police issue, according to me, it is not a police issue. Because police gets into action after the FIR gets registered. Action of the police is based on a crime being convicted, investigation being started, then charge sheet to be filed. Whereas the issues of women are very different, and especially if I see a lot of young girls. I know I grew up in Delhi and I've traveled a lot, I mean fairly across the country and outside the country. And I know no matter which country we talk about, the issues of women are common. And one of the issue is that, you feel unsafe in the company of certain types of men. For example, you're traveling in a bus and you feel unsafe because somebody makes a pass at you. Or you're going to your university and having a cup of coffee and you may have long hours of work on a weekend and otherwise, and you're not able to move out because you don't know who's getting behind you on the road and is trying to chase you. So those are issues: molestation, touching inappropriately, calling out names, affecting the mental health, affecting the emotional well-being of women. I would say that most of these ideas, horrendous ideas in men's head, come from the brain, and that tweaking with the brain needs to happen. And unfortunately, nobody is talking about tweaking with the brain. We allow a certain thought process. Say, for example, I hate the word Eve teasing. I feel, what is this Eve all about? Because you guys are no Adams, by the way. So according to me, it's gender parity, because how many women would be whistling at men while they are traveling? How many women would be pinching at the men's bottom or touching them inappropriately? How would men react if those things are done to men? And I know some children get affected by those things. Even male child will get affected because they are equally vulnerable. So I feel the thought process and the thought processes need to change. Electrifying dark spots, mapping the areas, the cities need to be mapped, that which are the areas which are vulnerable, that needs to be mapped. And I think getting more women planners, end of the day. How many women planners across the world exist who are city planners? We do not have many women planners. City planners are usually men. Attitudes change. Way of thinking is affected. A woman will think differently. I'm saying it with all responsibility. I'm saying men and women work alike. I always say, I said, people will come across me and they'll think, oh, you're talking to a guy because she looks like a woman. But the clarity in thought, as you sometimes attach it to gender, is genderless. But somewhere, how unsafe certain subways will be, how certain areas, train stations or bus stations become unsafe for women because there is no electrification or the light has failed, or certain alley which is covered by trees may not be the right spot and girls may actually be feeling uncomfortable traveling through those areas. We have to start thinking from those perspectives, which may not occur to a man because the man never grew up going through that process. Self-defense is the other thing.
You have had a very long innings in different courts here in Delhi. Could you share with our listeners a few of the cases which are very close to you?
Fortunate part is that I worked across spectrum of matters. Most matters where I made money from are not the ones which I remember. I remember the cases which did not bring much money to me. Much, or I should say no money to me. I started off as a tax lawyer. and criminal lawyer. Now those are the cases, I mean, I used to talk about ModVat, excise, customs, CVD and all that, because that's where I earned my money from, and bail applications because I was on the criminal side, FERA, etc., etc. Some murder appeal, those kinds. But what I remember is the first case which I did, which was 3 months of my starting a practice, and that was a case of a woman, I mean, and I'm purposely linking it to present scenario, how life has changed. So first case was about a woman who was a permanent worker of an embassy, but she became pregnant and she was thrown out of the job. How times have changed, that today we are talking about 26 weeks of paid maternity leave. And that case, which was my first case, I appeared before a magistrate who was a lady magistrate, and a senior in the law office I was in purposely sent me to argue because they thought I was as crazy or maybe more at that time, that let's send her because the case is going to be dismissed. Let her be the face of dismissal. Why should I be the face of dismissal? Whereas in my opinion at that time, like today, I will take the challenge. I say, you know, I'm going to argue and I'm going to make my argument good, and I will probably change the way people think. So I couldn't change the way people thought. The case did get dismissed, but I remember that incident, and that changed the way law operates now. So the second case also, I'm linking the second case also, that how the cases I lost made a difference. So the second case was a case where this young woman, young as in, I mean today I can say a young child, she was just about 19, working as a nursing orderly in a hospital, was raped and attempted to be murdered, and her eye had been gouged out.
Yes, there is a very well reported
Yes,
case from East Delhi.
That's right. So that is the case I did. And that was the girl who was in touch with me. I'm purposely not naming the girl, I'm purposely not naming the case. But those who have that memory would remember that matter. So this girl was with me, and for 8 years I worked with her, and I knew how emotionally vulnerable the persons get who are going through this. She was the sole breadwinner of a family. Father was unemployed, mother was unemployed. She was the only one working, and when she went through all this, there was no way of any money coming into the house. And even for her to reach me, because I was far away in another part of Delhi, I had to find a person who will escort her to my office because her medical condition was very bad. And there was no money in terms of paying for the auto fare. We worked at all those things, and the prosthesis, which finally, and there was a lot of problem in, say, getting her treated. So that was another case. In the same case, there was another case, how hospitals should work when such cases come before you. Can the private hospital disown their responsibility and say, go only to a government hospital, we will not treat, while she was being employed privately in a private hospital. So we changed that law also. And there was an LPA, the court decided, and how private hospitals get covered under the writ petition, which is a law which can be enforced, or right which can be enforced only against the government agency. So we kind of worked and got that changed. And then finally, I argued this matter from trial court to wherever, except in between, one LPA was argued by Ms. Lekhi. I got him to argue that because I was not able to go to the court. But on that particular instance, while we were arguing the matter, and I would demand that attempt to murder, she survived the attack not because the brutality was less or the accused did not want to kill her, but she survived because God's grace was with her. And because the God's grace is with her, the benefit can't accrue to the accused. So he should be punished for attempt to murder, and attempt to murder is equivalent to murder, and that very punishment should be accrued. And also the second highest crime, that is rape, is what he's done. So 2 counts. Because of 2 counts, the 2 life imprisonments should actually get converted into death penalty. This was my argument. Strange enough, the courts didn't accept this argument, and they gave life imprisonment. And every time I'll argue this matter, I still remember the names of the judges. They will look at me and they say, show us the law. Ms. Lekhi, we agree with you, but show us the law. And there was no law. And Unfortunately enough, we had Nirbhaya in Delhi. We were all on the forefront. I had that experience of losing that matter. I mean, I didn't lose that case, but in my ascertainment, I lost it because I wanted death penalty. So did this girl want death penalty. Now, both of us were struggling through our emotions. And while struggling through this emotion, we knew that it's not happening right now. What do we do? Couldn't do anything, though she got an employment with a Delhi government hospital. She settled in life. All those things are very, very positive. When Nirbhaya happened, I knew exactly where the gaps in law are. Fortunate enough that political parties were to send their representation to tweak the law. And my party, the two seniors, that time they were both leaders of the opposition in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, Mr. Jaitley and Ms. Swaraj, and Nitinji was our president. So these three people tied it down on my name that let her draft the recommendations on behalf of the party. So I drafted that letter, which of course went on the president's letterhead, was drafted by me, had the approval of both leaders of opposition, and 70%, 80% of that got converted into law. These are things which make you feel good about yourself, that end of the day you've not wasted your life. You've done something, you've contributed, maybe less, small, big. It has made an impact, and always learning from the gaps. You know, wrong things will happen in life. Life is not going to run the way you want it to run. There will be difficulties, there will be emotional challenges, there will be all kinds of challenge, but it is how you handle that situation and what you learn out of it and how you live your life thereafter is what will decide what happens to you at the end of the day. And I personally believe in that whenever there are difficulties, whenever there are challenges of anything which are uncomfortable for any person, that's the period which I call a learning phase, and you will get out of it. And you can use that knowledge to become whatever you wish to become out of that.
So from the hallowed precincts of Delhi High Court, the Supreme Court of India, to even hallower precincts, Parliament of India, how was the change from being a successful legal practitioner now to a lawmaker?
Each side has its positives and each side has its negatives. So the positive is you get to impact a very, very wide section of society. The negative is you've lived with certain personal commitments, you want to bring certain changes. Being part of the system, at times you're restrained from bringing those changes. So what you could do as a lawyer, as an independent person, you get tied down, in a way shackled, but you were impacting a smaller section. As an elected representative, you're making the law for the land, which is a very, very large section. So I have some very, very funny stories to tell on every count. The latest being, I was told again by the party to speak on triple talaq in the parliament. So I was to open the debate on behalf of my party. And if I start thinking about that subject, my memory goes back to, again, 85, 86. Shah Banu. I was in college that time. Arif Muhammad Khan was our hero because that was the time we were learning, we were struggling, we were still trying to negotiate our ways forward and how life needs to be lived. And as luck will have it, I come from a science background and graduated in law. But all that thinking process, all those changes, social to others, and all the experiences one gathered over a lifetime made me give the speech which I gave. And I thought this was a great opportunity because I lived through those moments. It's all in the memory. And that thing in your hard drive cannot go away because it's not about copying, texting from the books and all. It's how you feel about certain changes. And I felt that was a great opportunity which had come my way.
And here I must mention that one very senior member of the Lok Sabha did comment that your opening of the debate on the triple talaq was one of the best speeches he heard in the 16th Lok Sabha. It's still on for a year, but that's a recorded piece of information some very senior Lok Sabha member did say after listening to you.
Convey my regards and thanks. But I was only living through my moment.
Of course.
And for me it was, 30 years of experience in life, which as a young student I would have experienced, to the grown-up woman that I am, and all the plight of women which you come across. And one person, I will not name, but a very senior bureaucrat who was my friend in a long time, coming from the community, has 2 daughters. And on one of the Eids, I must have visited them. So his wife walked up to me. The older daughters got married. The second one was yet to be married. So she walked up to me and she said कि आपने उनका मदद किया, you've helped so and so, and I'm happy and grateful that you did help. So I looked at her, I said, Didi, nothing of that kind, you know. So she said, nahi, you know, if I say it in Hindi, तकलीफ तो लड़की के माँ बाप को ही होती है. And I felt, I still record that no matter which community we come from, no matter which part of the world we live in, it's the parents of the daughter who are hurt the maximum in this whole process. So when girls go through the problems, we forget the impact that has on the social setup, because children belong to the society. If a woman walks back to her parents' home with 2 kids in hands, the society gets impacted. It's not about community, it's about justice. And women deserve as much justice as men do.
Your constituency, the New Delhi constituency, it's very unique. It's a mix of cosmopolitan, urban, as well as you have rural voters also. How do you deal with the various issues of these heterogeneous groups?
See, I am technically all of this. So technically I am urban. I grew up in Delhi, but my parents had a rural background. My father came from Pakistan. We were refugees on my father's side. Mom's side also, I can say they were refugees because they came from Kashmir and lived in Old Delhi. As much refugees, maybe 400 years ago. And basically completely Delhi wala. I belong to Delhi. I've grown up in Delhi. I have friends across the spectrum, from rural to every section. So for me to relate to their issues is not that difficult. On the contrary, I laughingly say the guys for whom I work the max are the ones who are not my voters. I'll tell you how. The NDMC constituency, which is considered to be the most prestigious in the country, because all the ministers, Prime Minister, President, Parliament, everybody lives here. But they don't vote here. Who votes here? The voter lives in the servant quarter or in the back lane. So I have to start thinking for them and not the ones living in the bungalow, because the guys in the bungalows don't vote for me. But they get the maximum benefit of my presence. So I always say the policies have to be for the people who are in the by-lanes. That's one. Second is all the so-called rich part of Delhi and the country is also part of my constituency. So people who contribute the most in terms of GDP, people who are industrialists, people who give employment to so many people, who bring latest technologies to the city and the country also are part of my constituency. From Prithviraj Road to Vasant Vihar to GK1, GK2. Is all part of this constituency. And then you have middle income groups where the government staff, government servants from class 4 to class 1 officers, everyone is here. And a rural voter, because all these colonies have one village whose land was taken to make these colonies. Absolutely. It was their land on which New Delhi is built. And unfortunately, the planning, the benefit has not accrued to them. So I have to constantly balance these interests. And I'm thankful, grateful, successful for the simple reason that the trust is with me. People know she would stand by both sides and she understands both sides. So, for example, there is one group which says, oh, the toilet should not be made in this section because it's very close to the walking path. I say, yeah, you're right. But the other side from your own park came to me and wanted these toilets constructed because they feel women will be unsafe to travel to a distant area. So should this not be here? Oh yeah, that's a point of view. So that's what I do.
Today we see many professional women across, say, from IT or MBA, you know, they are coming into politics. What is your take on this and how good is this for Indian democracy?
I feel that's fantastic. Because end of the day, that's the kind of participation we are looking at. And I am dead against wives, daughters to get into politics. I mean, I'm not against them getting into politics, but that cannot be claim to fame. Everybody is somebody's wife or daughter-in-law. Those relationships we all enjoy, but we don't want to be known by those relationships. Those are our assets, but those assets are personal assets. Those assets exist with men also. But when you participate, you have to have the leadership potential in your own capacity as a person, and professionally trained women do make a difference, because it gives you an edge over men around you, and also they can't treat you differently. You know, again being caustic, that You're not a showpiece. You're a living being. Ask women, what do they want? Whenever they say, women want this, women want that, I say, no, sorry. Women only want to be treated as human beings. We are not showpieces. I'm not a showpiece. You can't showcase me, tell me to do this, tell me to walk. I'm sorry, I will neither walk the ramp and nor will I listen to you. I will do what I think is right. And I'm a thinking, living human being. And I have huge opinion on most subjects, like it or hate it. And I'm going to stick to my opinion. I may change my opinion provided you give me a better alternative thought.
There's also tremendous bonding across party lines among women members. Recently, we witnessed this. There was this conference which was called by Honorable Speaker called We for Change. And
That's
you
right.
were also a part of that initiative, ma'am. So how do you assess this development and what needs to take this forward?
I think it's fantastic because even if I believe in gender parity, I believe in complete no recognition for gender. I'm that kind of a person. But I also believe that men will have their manly conversations and women will also have their womanly conversations. So there are subjects and issues which we women can't discuss with men, but they do crop up in our heads. And men also have certain issues and thought processes which they will hesitate to discuss with women. So this is called bonhomie across party lines. So women will tend to galvanize towards each other and men will, irrespective of the party politics, will have friends all over. So I think this is as normal as it gets in social setups, and it's a fantastic way of looking at things, that while we can argue, we can discuss, and no giving in on principles, no giving in on politics, but you could rise above politics on occasions and you could be friends otherwise. You can always have a cup of coffee even with your enemy, so-called enemy. I mean, I don't recognize enemies, but you can always have a cup of coffee with people who may not like you. I always say the ones who don't like me should have a cup of coffee. They'll probably change their point of view.
This is the age of technology, post-truth, fake news, trolls. These are the in things these days. Do you think that women politicians are vulnerable to this, and so how?
Women are vulnerable, but so are men vulnerable. Fake news affects everyone. Once you are in public life, it's very hard to deal with fake news. And I'm going to share a personal experience here. And I feel many platforms don't do justice, and we need to bring in a law. We need to deal with this menace. Two things I'm going to talk about. One is that recently I read that fake news about certain kidnappings, and some people have died in the process. So there is an attempt to exaggerate things. Second thing I wish to share is that certain platforms are used to mobilize people. Police is given a wrong information. If a protest is supposed to have 200 people, there are 220 policemen in the area, and suddenly you see 22,000 people landing with fireballs in their hands. How do you manage that? And if there's a shootout, you blame the state government. So I feel these are all connected issues from a security point of view, and we must think about it. Second thing is, and that's a personal case which I filed with the police, by the way. I'm a dog lover, not just dog, but animal lover, environmentalist, someone who loves God's creations. And my family, we feed about 9 dogs at home and 2 dogs in my office together. And the kind of, in the area, if there's a problem, they will contact my husband or any of us, and they will say, you know, so-and-so needs to be treated, and he's large-hearted enough to deal with all that. And I personally am very fond of animals. My son told me that the first thing you're going to do is you will care for animals before I got elected. So he said, one promise you're going to make to me, you're going to give animal ambulances. So I'm like, yes, I will. Okay. He said, that's a promise to your son. I say, yes. He said, everybody thinks of humans. Nobody thinks of animals. Look at the way these strays are happening and how cruel people are. So that was my son's concern. So why I'm giving this history is that that's the kind of sensitive family I come from. But there was a fight between 2 groups in a park in one of my prestigious neighborhood. And one lady who's politically connected, actually, I went into her history subsequently, ran a story that so-and-so is claiming to be belonging to my party and is an animal hater, was promoting another member from my party and tagging me constantly that as if I am the one telling her to misconduct herself repeatedly. Then I wrote back to her and I told her that remove this particular video, because this video gives nothing except two people bickering like bad neighbors. But if anybody has done anything, register a police case. If somebody's killed a dog, you register an FIR. But the post-mortem of the dog needs to be conducted. Whether what you're saying is right or the dog died of natural causes or consuming some wrong food or wherever, it has to be investigated. But you can't tag me. And here you're dealing with a dog lover. While I'm a dog lover, I also understand the people who are not that comfortable with the dogs, and they may have a point of view, and that is to do with soiling and littering the parks or bites. And people don't understand that you've got to neuter the dogs to deal with the bite issues. But irrespective of these things, this video was going viral. After me telling her that remove my name, that name was never removed. Somebody who gets about 25, 30 likes or whatever, this video was shared 4,000 times. And after being flagged with the platform repeatedly, because I also have certain following in the society and people know me and people love me, they kept flagging and they kept saying this is false, she's not like this. Yet this went on, and the social media platform, which should have ideally removed that video, chose not to remove it. So I filed a police case. And I feel this kind of intervention in our political system and in our social system is happening consciously. It's not unconscious and not so well known fact, but I think it's all being done in a manipulative way. So I think we as society need to think about it. It's not just happening in India, it can happen anywhere in the world. You basically pawning your social systems to few algorithms which could be handled by the wrong kinds of people. How safe is that? And what is our policy dealing with it? So I think a couple of things I would genuinely like to work on, and this is one such issue which I have flagged through you, and I want people to show their concern towards it.
That's very elucidatingly spoken, and I'm sure that people will discuss this very important issue also. What is your advice to budding legal professionals?
A lot of hard work, and don't think about the money in the beginning. You will get it on the way, but don't work only for that. And that's the best way to earn money, because then it will flow in. Simply because you are so good, people will chase you.
We all are inspired by someone. There are people who have inspired you, motivated you. Can you just recall a couple of your favorite people?
So when I think of favorites, somebody who was my friend, and people may find it a little sissy and biased, but my husband was my friend, and I fell for him because he was a great guy and helped me grow up in so many ways. Somebody who was wiser to hold the hand and take me through. Then my own boys, who are my conscience keeper right now. When people may find it difficult to criticize me, they are the ones who are my biggest critiques. And they will critique every action and come as helping hands also so many times. So I guess that's a mutual admiration club. We all love each other and we all admire each other. But apart from this, every part of my life